Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance. This time it's not Karen, but Kevin who opens our video. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Karma hits entitled Kevin. I've heard that a Kevin is a male version of Karen, so that's what we'll be calling the main character of this story. I've worked retail management for over a decade and have dealt with my fair share of Karens and Kevins, but this one particular Kevin sticks out. Setting: a retail drugstore chain. He was always complaining about everything from a customer smoking in the parking lot to having to wait 5 seconds for the cashier to acknowledge him. He once called me a greedy businesswoman when I refused to sell him the display model for a fan. There were plenty of those fans in their boxes. The main problem he was in pharmacy. He took a multitude of prescriptions and he had our state's version of Medicaid insurance. Medicaid is government-funded insurance for the low income. Although it's free, it comes with a lot of restrictions and paperwork. One of the main restrictions was that it'll only cover generic medications unless authorized by a doctor. To get this authorization, we faxed the doctor a TAR form. Kevin demanded we give him name brand, claiming the generics didn't work. Every time we explained to him Medicaid doesn't cover name brand drugs, every time we faxed his doctor a TAR form, every time his doctor rejected it. His doctor even asked us to please stop faxing him. Kevin swore we were trying to kill him and that he was going to sue us. He would specifically mention how high his blood pressure was. We politely told him to call his insurance and to please take his business to our competitor across the street. Our competitor asked us to please stop sending him over because he was banned. Several times he did call the Medicaid offices and they confirmed that they would only cover generics. That calmed him down for a month, then it was back to being a Kevin. After over a year of dealing with Kevin, his attitude finally cost him. To get your prescription, you can either come inside the store and get in line, or you can go through the drive-thru, similar to fast food. This particular day, Kevin was in the drive-thru getting his prescriptions. Then he started to demand bread, milk, eggs, and other groceries. We told him that the drive-thru is for prescriptions only. He kept demanding that we get him his groceries. After 5 minutes of refusing to leave, the store manager comes and asks if we get him his things, will he please leave? Kevin said yes. Then it pretty much turned into a hostage situation. Kevin made more demands, the manager had enough and decided to call the police. What happened next depends on who you believe. According to the police, when Kevin refused to leave, he appeared to be having a heart attack, so they dragged him out of his car. According to Kevin, the police took his keys away so he couldn't drive. Whatever happened, Kevin was in the back of the police car and his car was parked in the middle of our drive-thru. We called a towing company to please remove Kevin's car. Kevin was unable to pay the impound fee, so he lost his car and had to rely on friends and public transportation to get him everywhere. The irony I see in all this, Kevin constantly complained about his blood pressure being too high. Maybe if he wasn't such a Kevin, his blood pressure might not have been so high and he'd still have his car. Don't you love people who lack the intelligence or humility to refuse admitting fault and blame everyone else for their problems? Stupid gets the stupid reward. And our second story. Mom doesn't believe her daughter, ends up hospitalized. So this is about me, then 16, now 23, and my mom. My mom is usually the best mom I can imagine, but at this time my grandma, her mother, just died, and we got a lot of frustration because I was always feeling sick stomach pain and some dizziness. This kept on going on and was getting worse. At one point, I wasn't able to see for a while. Like in the morning, I would get out of bed and my sight went black and my head spun. In this state, I was walking out of my room along the hallway, down the stairs, another hallway into the kitchen. When I was at the fridge opening the door, I could see again. And my mother didn't believe me. School was horror at this time. My school had a lot of stairs and I was constantly tired, dizzy, and so unconcentrated. Of course, a tad sad and a lot frustrated. She always used to believe me when I wasn't feeling good. One day I just couldn't anymore. I was so tired sitting in our kitchen that I just wanted back into my bed, so I asked my mom, begged her to stay home. Mom, so you're feeling sick again? This can't go on like this. But Mom, it's not again, it's still. I feel really dizzy. You're always tired. I get you to the doctor, he'll tell you how sick you really are. At this point, I was so frustrated and just yelled back, "Yes, please, please take me to the doctor." Finally, I wanted to go for weeks. "Okay, get dressed. We're going right now. Then we'll know for sure you aren't sick." So we made our way to the doc, and I can't remember everything he did, but he did a complete blood test, so the nurse handed me my results. There was an inflammatory value, which standard was between 3 and 5, the maximum was 8. Mine was 124. The doctor walked back in and told my mother, "So please don't be shocked. I'm writing your daughter a referral to the hospital. She has to immediately go there." My mom was shocked, didn't say a word. As we got there, a nurse came rushing with a wheelchair, and I was hospitalized for over a week. My mom apologized and never ever didn't believe me again. And our next story. Karen declares war on my parents for cutting a tree down on their own property. I, 25-year-old male, have been living away from home ever since graduating college. My parents both retired recently, and last summer they decided to use some of the money they saved up to finally build their dream retirement home in New Orleans, where they've been living for the past 10 years. I come from a very tight-knit family, so I still talk to my parents every week, and they were so excited when they said they'd already picked out the location where they wanted the house built. It was an empty lot in a nice neighborhood where a house had been demolished not long before due to age, and the previous owner, who was pretty wealthy and owned numerous properties around the city, decided that the lot was worth more without the house on it. Anyway, my parents snapped it up as soon as it came on the market, but not long after construction began, they realized they were building their dream house right next door to the lair of a wild Karen. The trouble started when my parents had to cut down a large oak tree that had sat in front of the lot. It was a real beauty, too, one of those big southern live oaks, and although they didn't want to, they knew they had to remove it because it was in the way. No one likes to cut down a big, beautiful tree, and believe me, if there was a way to avoid doing it without impeding the construction, my parents would have taken it. So they called a tree removal service, and the tree was soon gone. Well, a few days after the tree had been cut down, my dad was on the property talking to some of the construction guys and making sure everything was going smoothly. He was going back to his car when he saw a woman in her late 50s walk out of the house next door and head to her mailbox. My dad, let's call him John, is a pretty chill and laid-back guy who likes to be on good terms with everyone. So he walked over and introduced himself. "Hi," he said, holding out his hand. "My name's John, and my wife and I are going to be your neighbors once our house is finished. I just wanted to come over and say hi and introduce myself. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" Karen glanced at the extended hand, then looked up at my dad and glared at him. "My name is none of your business," she snapped. "I'm not going to shake your hand because of COVID. And even if there was no COVID, I still wouldn't shake your hand because you people ruined my life when you cut down my tree. I still can't believe how selfish you are. You should be ashamed of yourselves." My dad was taken aback by this and pointed out that Karen already had a nice big oak tree in her backyard, but Karen ignored him and stalked back inside her house. She never explained why she thought she was the owner of the tree that had been cut down, not once. And whenever my parents asked about it, she refused to answer. I guess it's just one of those things we'll never know, like what really happened to the Lost Roanoke colony or the fate of D.B. Cooper. My parents met some of the other neighbors later that day, including a nice elderly couple who lived in the other house next door to Karen. And when my dad told them what happened, the neighbors said Karen was like that to everyone and no one in the neighborhood liked her. They also said that Karen had been nasty to them for a long time, and they were in the process of selling their house because they couldn't stand living next door to her anymore. Karen soon began living up to her reputation. For months, whenever my parents would visit the house to see how the construction was coming along, she'd find something to complain or confront them about. One time, she said the construction workers were being too loud and threatened to call the police, even though it was the middle of the day. Another time, she said that the construction company was using illegal immigrants as cheap labor and threatened to call ICE and have the whole project shut down. My dad mentioned this to the owner of the company, and the owner sent Karen a formal letter threatening a lawsuit if she tried. I don't know if there were any actual grounds for a lawsuit, but the threat must have worked because ICE never showed up. Oh, and then there was the time she tried to have my parents' car towed for illegal parking when they parked by the curb of their still unfinished house. The first my parents knew about this was when the tow truck showed up, but the driver took one look at where my parents' car was parked and told Karen he'd send her a bill for wasting his time if she called him again. I could go on. Karen did everything she could think of to try and interfere. She was absolutely relentless in her crusade to avenge a tree that she never even owned. Happily, the house was completed despite her best efforts, and my parents moved in not long after the holidays. My mom told me later that she caught Karen watching them bitterly from her window as they were taking some of their boxes inside. She was concerned that Karen might keep going and try something else, but I guess Karen was too busy wallowing in self-pity over her failure or something, because things were actually quiet for a while. But a few weeks ago, things changed. New Orleans has had some really bad weather lately due to the winter storms that are battering much of the southern U.S. right now, and one night, one of those storms was so powerful that it knocked over the tree in Karen's backyard. It missed falling onto her house, but it didn't miss falling onto her shiny new Jaguar and crushing it like a beer can. According to my folks, Karen didn't discover what happened until the following morning when she came outside and saw the pile of scrap metal that used to be her car. She threw back her head and let out a primal scream like something out of The Exorcist. She had to pay a tree removal service to get rid of the tree, then she had to pay for a tow truck to get rid of the car too, then she had to get a rental car too. Karen put her property up for sale and moved out not long afterward. Everyone in the neighborhood was glad to see her go, and my parents enjoyed watching her drive off into the sunset from the front porch of their amazing new house. R.I.P. That tree took one for the team to better the neighborhood. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.